Looks like that's good. 1 and a 2 and a 3, and I think, theoretically, we should be good. I think. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do some chaotic good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Chaotic Good Sports. Appreciate you joining. Before we jump in and introduce our guest for this evening, Adam has selected St. Jude as the charity that is going to receive 100% of your super chats tonight. There is also a secondary link in the description as well. St. Jude, an organization that we are very familiar with as we raise money for them for 30 and 30, the International Stadium Tour, as they are looking to annihilate children's cancer, as they have raised the survival rate from 20% to 80%. St. Jude does amazing work. Parents never get a bill, and I am more than happy to raise money for them. And so, with all that being said, my guest tonight, he is the director of live events over at WWE. He is a 5-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He is, more importantly, a Green Bay Packers fan and the current GM of Monday Night Raw, Mr. Adam Pearce.
Oh, thank you. Hey, can we make this official? Am I now a member of the Grossi Posse?
It is official. You are now a member of the Grossi Posse. Adam.
Let's go.
Welcome to the show, baby. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Man, it's so dope to be able to talk to you, just like as a wrestling fan and admirer of your work for a long time, and just to be able to kind of geek out about the product for 45 minutes. I want to jump right in. Born in Illinois, right?
Yep.
Let's get this out of the way. Thank God you chose the Green Bay Packers as your team. When did this happen, and when did you see the light that, hey, I'm following the Cheeseheads?
I would love to take credit for it, Tom, but I can't. I have to give that to my dad, Dave Pearce. He and my mom, Pam, were born and raised in Wisconsin, Milwaukee specifically, and then they matriculated south of the border into northern Lake County in Illinois, about a half hour north of Chicago or so. And when I was a kid, my dad said, look, we live in Illinois, and if you want to be a Cub fan and a Blackhawk fan and a Bulls fan, that's fine. But there will never be a Bears fan in my house. Do
Papa
you
Pearce.
understand? Papa Pearce. And I said, sir, yes, sir. And here we are. Go, Pack, go.
Okay, so you know what? Shout out to Papa Pearce, making the right decision. Make sure the generations are carrying on, because that's the most important thing there.
And the generations are carrying on, I will have you know, even living now south here in Florida.
Excellent. I mean,
cheese,
listen.
We praise the cheese. You know what I'm saying?
We have to. And at this point, we're just waiting for Seth Rollins to convert over. I mean, how much bad football can he possibly take, and just representing the brand, he's got to do better,
I would love to share with you a story. Yesterday, when I saw him in the arena, of course, he returned to Monday Night Raw last night, helping Braun Strowman be successful in the last monster standing match against Bronson Reed. When I saw him backstage, he didn't say hello. He didn't give me a hug. He didn't smile. He looked me square in the face, Tom, and I'll have you know that man said, F your Packers. That's what the man said to me, the very first sentence out of his mouth. And you know what I said to him? I said, your quarterback paints his nails.
Listen, all I'm going to say, Malik Willis, Caleb Williams, both have won 2 games this season. That's all I'm going to say. Malik
I know
Willis,
what I'm taking.
I think we just proved the point there. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I'm so glad that exists too. Just even like backstage of just like, hey, I know who you root for. Good. We are going to be mortal enemies in this arena. And that just makes me very, very happy.
And we are.
Excellent. Adam, I want to get started and kind of just talking about you, because you have had such an illustrious career in this amazing business.
Thank you.
You start out in high school, and I want to talk about pre-surgery, because I definitely want to talk about that. But
okay.
Pre-surgery, right? You're an athletic guy playing baseball, you're playing football. Is there even any consideration of wrestling at that point? Are you just watching the product? Like, are you consuming it? Or is it something that doesn't kind of even enter your sphere until later, after your junior year?
Yeah, what's funny about it is wrestling fans are always blown away because I am not the guy that dreamed of being in WrestleMania. That wasn't that wasn't my dream. I dreamed of wearing green and gold on Sundays. And I'm always say this, and I mean it sincerely. I didn't find pro wrestling. Pro wrestling found me. So
Yeah.
I was a fan, obviously. Yes, my uncle Mike, who's still living in Wisconsin, he was the one really the catalyst for my wrestling fandom. I would go with him to Brewer games in the summer, and we would go to the matches. And at that period of time in the mid '80s,
Yeah.
trailing on, we went to a lot of AWA cards then at the Mecca Arena in Milwaukee before I even knew what WWF, now obviously WWE, was. He's the one to blame for it. So Uncle Mike, if you're listening, and I hope you are, it's your fault.
Shout
And
out
I
Uncle
love you
Mike.
for it. Shout out.
We just want to say also, Adam, because we are raising money during this time for St. Jude. We just got a $500 donation, and in the 5 minutes we've been talking, we have already raised over $1,000 for St. Jude. So that's that chaotic good, baby. That's that chaotic good.
Thank you.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's go.
I appreciate you. So you kind of get, Uncle Mike kind of gives you that exposure to the business, right? And just kind of enjoying as a consumer and going along. And then in high school, you got to deal with some pretty traumatic things, my friend. You have a major surgery on both of your legs. And I read a 2010 interview that you did and talked about kind of what that process was like, and just learned you were removed from sports, couldn't really participate in sports anymore. And then on top of that, you had to relearn how to walk again. Kind of what's your mindset during that time? Because I have to imagine, like, that's a pretty dark period in your life, especially you're dreaming about being in the green and gold, you're an athletic guy, you're playing different sports, and now all of a sudden between your junior and senior year of high school, that's kind of taken away from you.
Yeah, I think back now, so obviously I'm not in high school thinking about being a pro wrestler, but I wanted to play football with everything that I had in me. And between my junior and senior season in mini camps, I started having a lot of pain in my lower legs and my calves. And my training staff, I went to Waukegan High School in Waukegan, Illinois. They thought I had shin splints.
Okay.
And I was playing tackle at that period of time, right around 270-ish. So I was on the heavier side. And I'm like, no, man, I would get done with practice and I would have to sit down for 40, 45 minutes before I could even walk. Again, my legs would just throb. So I was diagnosed with acute muscular compartment syndrome by Dr. Ed Hamming, who was one of the Bears doctors at that period of time.
Oh.
And crazy, right? So I remember going in on a Thursday to be diagnosed, which that process in and of itself was mind numbing. They basically took a pressure gauge, and I'm assuming they do this differently now than they did in 1995, 4, whatever year it was. There was a pressure gauge with a syringe on it. They stuck it into my calves on both of my legs and took a resting pressure reading of the 4 muscle compartments in my lower legs. Then I had to go out in the parking lot at Lake Forest Hospital and run for 10 minutes. Then they would take another pressure reading. The pressure inside my lower legs was so off the charts, they thought the gauge was broken. So they did and redid the test 4 times on that Thursday before he came in and said, look, you have an acute case of this. I'm afraid that your muscle fibers are imploding and dying on the inside. I'm worried about gangrene. We need to have surgery. And we did that following Monday. So I went on a Thursday to find out what was wrong with me. On Monday, I'm being cut open. And for a 16-year-old kid, that wrecked me.
Yeah.
It wrecked me mentally. And went into a deep depression. I went from about, like I said, 270, and I went down to like 215 pounds. Yeah, it was just a ridiculous period of time. And the thing I think I look back on now, the convalescence physically would have been so much easier. I just was not in the headspace to really deal with that. I'm thinking, man, I was talking to Southern Illinois University at that period of time. I'm going to go play college ball. And then I felt like it was just taken away from me.
Yeah.
And man. And in that dark time is when I discovered pro wrestling.
Yeah. So in November of 95, you start training. And I mean, first of all, Adam, I mean, like the amount of just pressure, and as a 16-year-old kid, like just going through that. And like you said, just having that kind of taken away from you, and just like any teenager who is dreaming of like, hey, I'm going to be running out at Lambeau Field, right? And like all that stuff, or at least get an opportunity to and leave it all out on the field and have that taken away. Now you're kind of starting to pivot, and out of like kind of that depression, you start getting more into wrestling. what kind of convinces you to go from, watching with Uncle Mike to hopping in that ring for the first time? Because that is a very big difference, my friend. Once you start watching the bumps and taking them, a little bit different.
Yeah, it's eye-opening to say the least. So I'm basically sitting in my room in my basement of my parents' house, sulking, depressed. My life is over. I'm a teenager. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Yada yada yada. And on cable access, which if for people who are much younger than I am, there was this thing called cable access where you could just put your own TV show on cable, local cable, if you knew the right connections. Well, there was a gentleman by the name of Brian Shank and his buddy Danny Bartels, and they had a show called Off the Top Rope, where they talked about obviously all the mainstream wrestling at the time, all the WWF, NWA, AWA, whatever was going on. And on top of that, they talked about freelance and independent companies that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So I had buddies that were fans of that show. I watched that show. They put me in contact with the host of the show, who put me in contact with my initial trainer, Sonny Rogers, on the north side of Chicago. And I go, wait a minute. This is athletics. This is showmanship. This is something I can kind of sink my teeth into. And it gave me an avenue and a way out of being depressed and a way forward. And I am eternally grateful.
At what point is it early on, or does it kind of naturalize throughout your career where you become hooked, right? Because you're talking about I didn't dream about WrestleMania and the confetti and all that stuff. At what point is it when you're like, hey, football's kind of being put to the side right now, and so now what we're going to do is just dive full head steam into something that you can get into?
That happened on November 5th, 1995, the very first day I walked into that camp on the corner of Lawrence and Broadway in the north side of Chicago. This was it was like a vocational school, a 3-story vocational school, I guess you would call it. And on the third floor in the back corner of the building, there was a room that was just big enough to hold a 16-foot by 16-foot ring. And when I walked in on that Sunday afternoon, Ace Steele, who's still around, still in the business, one of my dear friends who I just had dinner with last week, was putting a ring up, helping put the ring up. So I just jumped in and I'm watching him tell me what to do. Where do we put this ring? And I go, man, this is a team. This is exactly what I was used to in baseball and football. It's camaraderie. It's athletics. It's let's go. And I just happened to kind of be a natural from day one. And here we are.
NBD, just crushing it day one. No big deal.
Hey, man, if you're good, you're good.
Hey, you're good, you're good. I mean, so that's what I wanted to ask you, because I had to triple check this to make sure I had my info right. So November of 95, you walk in, first day, right?
Yep.
Your first match is May of 96.
Yeah.
That feels, and correct me, that feels like a very quick turnaround.
Especially at that period of time, because the way the training was for me, and I'm sure old timers will say, well, back in my day, it was much worse, but I wasn't even allowed really in the ring until I had a pair of boots, until I had to, there were certain levels you had to pass before you could even get into the ring. Like I didn't learn how to run the ropes or even bounce off the ropes or do anything with the ropes or the turnbuckles or really even take bumps until I understood holds and the very, very, very ground level of our business. And that happened very quickly for me. So yeah, fortunate. May 16th, 96 was about a month or so before I graduated from Waukegan.
About 3 weeks.
School. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great time, man. And my senior class showed out. The football players showed out. My favorite high school coach, Chris Dreyer, who I was a dear friend to this day, he was there. Of course, my family was there. And that began a journey that, dude, we're like 30 years down the line. It's crazy.
It's pretty wild how you just get into the business, right? Yeah. And I mean, from going to being voted class nonconformist, Mr. Pearce, Mr. Pearce,
yes, sir.
And then you got your buddies coming out and supporting you. What are your emotions at that time when you're about to step into the ring for the first time to have your first official match? Because I have to imagine it's a mixture of nerves and also excitement. Like, where are you at mentally, heading into that process, into that first match?
You nailed it. It's the gamut of emotions. It's all of them. I was so nervous to embarrass my trainers, and thankfully it was a 6-man tag my first match, and 2 of my trainers were in the match. So I had people in there that they could literally, if they had to, hold my hand and walk me through this thing. and they put together a very friendly match for me. They made me look great in front of my hometown crowd. I was just grateful, man, really grateful.
Yeah.
And it went so well. And I was like, when can I do this again?
Of course.
You know, like, let's go. Let's keep going. And then you start doing the summer fair tours and a lot in Wisconsin. And it just started then and it never stopped. Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, the next few years, you know, you're traveling, especially around like the Midwest, the Milwaukee area. You get to go to Europe to wrestle. Man, like, what is that? Was that your first time like out of the country, or is that like at least your first time out of the country for your what would be your profession? That has to be also a sense of like, whoa, okay, because this starts to move pretty quickly.
And they were paying me. Couldn't you believe that? Yeah, that was 98. Carmine DeSpirito, he ran Mid-American Wrestling in Milwaukee for years and years. And he always ran European tours. And fortunately enough, in like I said, 98, he had a tour of Austria in 10 days in the same spot, kind of like Otto Vance used to do, where you'd go to one town and you'd work every day. So we did that for 10 days in the worst, stiffest concrete boxing ring of all time. But what do I care, dude? I was 19 or almost 20 at that point.
Invincible.
And yeah, dude, like you said, yes, invincible and raring to go. And yeah, it was my first trip out of the country. And I didn't have any time. My dad had to drive me down to downtown Chicago to expedite my passport in one day because I had like a week. He's like, you're booked on the store. Do you have a passport? I'm like, no, why would I need a passport? Like, it was so foreign to me, pardon the pun. I had no clue what I was doing. Of course, my old man, we got it taken care of. And a couple of weeks later, I was on a plane to Europe and let the games begin.
I love it. And you said your first match is a 6-man tag. When you have your first singles match, how like close does that happen after your first like official match?
Oh my God.
Because I have to imagine there's a pretty significant difference in terms of just like, obviously,
for sure.
you know, what is expected of you and what you need to do. And there is a lot less hand holding. Of course, it depends on who you're in the ring with, but you know, you don't have those guardrails anymore. It's just one-on-one, my friend.
I think it had to have been maybe a month later. And again, that would have been for Carmine DeSpirito in Milwaukee too. And I can't remember for sure, but I want to say it was with a guy named Jerry Maywald. He called himself the Mauler, and he's passed, so God rest his soul. But again, I just listened to him, and it was that was still a period of time where the veterans would just say, "Listen to me, kid. Just listen to me. Do what I tell you, when I tell you, and everything will be okay."
Just call him the spots.
It always has been. That's it, man. Let's go. You lead, I follow. No problem.
I love it so much because at some point, right, there is probably something that clicks in which you talk about you're a natural, you're having these matches, you're going out of the country, you're going around, especially the Midwest.
Right.
At what point are you looking at yourself like intrinsically and going, okay, this is the kind of style that I want to further develop? Because as a wrestler, right, you are going to adapt to some type of style that either one, you're really, really good at, or two, you're looking to pursue. At what point for you does it click and you go, okay, this is the kind of wrestler that I want to be?
Well, interesting question. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it. Looking back, I have always been a fan of what would be considered the old school of wrestling. So when you're in there performing, especially your first few years, when you are literally and figuratively a rookie, and sometimes that's longer than a year, you might be a rookie for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You're listening to the people you're working for and your people you're working with, and you're doing what they tell you to do. So you're not exactly finding your own style. You're basically, hey man, I'm spoon feeding you, and you're going to eat it, and hopefully you're digesting what I'm feeding you, so that you can start to understand the how, when, what, and why of how our business works.
Yeah.
Probably 5 years down the line, I started to figure out, okay, I wanted to, and I'd always been a good guy, and I had long hair, and I was very pretty back in the day. I don't mind saying it. But I wanted to be the bad guy because it was more fun, and it is more fun, I assure you. So yeah, probably 5 years in, I started to think about, okay, well, I've got, X number of matches under my belt. I feel like I'm good at these certain things. I feel like I don't like this kind of stuff. And so I started to move in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an awesome transformation. And again, just to keep this in mind, like, this is happening relatively quickly. I mean, in terms of just like, hey, I'm a senior in high school and like, I'm going to jump into this, and then you're having matches, and then you're going around the country, and then like, man, that's happening quick.
It happened very fast.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. Your first championship.
Oh boy.
ACW, Green Bay?
Huh. I don't know if it was the first one, but No, I don't think it would have been the first one. Probably an obscure company in Illinois before that. But ACW, man, that's when I started to really find my groove
Yeah.
in terms of, okay, this is the persona I have, and this is the attitude I want to put
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. And that's when I really started to have a lot of fun and get a little bit of notoriety in the Midwest and started to move around a lot more. Now I'm doing St. Paul and in
Yep.
Green Bay and Indianapolis and Detroit and St. Louis, and you're really starting to work the territory, so to speak. So again, that's probably 5, 6, 7 years in.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think at that period of time, I'm 22, 23 years old and just having the time of my life, man.
Of course. And I mean, the first time, whether it's then or before, if it's in Illinois, that you win a championship in this industry. Like, I don't care if it's, from some small indie company. I don't care, man. Like that's a championship, right?
What that means is the person that you're working for has faith in you to deliver on the product that they're trying to sell to their consumer. That's literally what that means. They have faith in you to deliver what they're trying to sell in the best way possible.
What is
That's
that?
an honor.
Yeah. I mean, is that for you? Do you look at that? Because I imagine, again, a mixture of emotions. Is that a little bit of validation for the work that you had done so far? And is there also that mix of like pressure of like, okay, well, now I have this trust, I have the ball, now I got to go run with it?
Yeah, there's certainly some of that. And there's a professional pride. You want to do a good job. You want to basically tell the person who's putting their faith in you, you damn right, you should put your faith in me. If you have any pride whatsoever in your performance and your work ethic, you want the ball. Yeah. You want to be in that pressure spot. You want to be able to be the one that has to deliver the goods when it's time. On the other side of that, I didn't grow up dreaming of being a champion in wrestling. So I didn't have some guys, they get a championship or they have that belt, and man, that goes to your head a little bit. And
boyhood dream.
The boy, you know what? You forget what you're in there and what the purpose is. And the championship, you're not really winning the championship. Someone is bestowing that upon you. You know what I mean? Because they feel like you, again, can sell their product. So,
Adam Pearce, that is the most old school wrestling. Like, that is 100% of just like, yeah, I'm borrowing it. I'm leasing it right now.
Right. It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's a prop.
It's so fascinating too, because like talking to different wrestlers and talking to different athletes like in this business, you ask that question, you're going to get a variety of answers, right? Like you're going to have a wrestler and just be like, it was the greatest moment of my life. It's this thing I've been working for like this entire time. I think, I don't want to say necessarily healthier, but I think having that level-headed approach where you could be like, no, like as a business, this is how I'm looking at it. Like this is a transaction and saying, hey, now I'm this guy and now I got to go out and perform for this company who's entrusted all of this faith in me. Yeah, I mean, looking at it that way, I think it's kind of tough to get, kind of a big head about it because you're just like, I'm in here to do the job.
Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you're on a roll, you're doing good business.
Sure.
You're getting the pop, whatever the case may be. That will definitely go to your head. I had really, really strong mentors and trainers who were not afraid to smack me when I needed it and to say, hey, Pearce, get your ass and your head in the game.
Yeah.
Know why you're here. And I tell young wrestlers this to this day. I ask them, who do we work for as wrestling people? Who are you working for? And the number one answer I always get is the fans.
Sure.
And I say, you're absolutely right. But don't forget that the biggest fan, the most important fan that you're working for is the one that's paying you. Who are you working for? The one who puts the check in your checking account. That is the number one fan. Do good business and you'll have a job for a long time.
Oh, Adam, I'm so shocked that you have this long career with that kind of mindset of just like, it's doing good business.
That's right? It, man.
Not to quote the authority of Best for Business, but again, like just like that kind of idea that you're looking at this of, hey, this is what the business is. At the end of the day, I want to put on the best product for the fans who are giving their hard-earned money to come see it. At the same time, like I'm also trying to do right by the business that is employing me right now.
And it's a mentality I carry to this day, Tom. What is best for the scenario? What are we trying to accomplish in this segment or in this show or in this pay-per-view? What is the point of what we're doing? And how can I best accomplish or push towards accomplishing that goal? That is always my outset, period.
Because as time is going along, right? Like you just start racking up accolades, and there was one that really stuck out to me. So in 1999, you had a cage match, right? Mm-hmm. Dino Bambino, and it's named the Match of the Year. Match of the Year, my man. You are in the business for 3 years.
Yeah, 95 to 99. So yeah, if you want to count
We
96
count
for my
we count
first
four.
match,
We'll
sure.
give you four.
Sure.
Does that register at that time, like as a young man going through this process, and now you're getting accolades like put on the okay, like all right, I'm putting on the best match here. Does that do anything again, even in terms of just validation for you that something's going right besides me just getting money as I just continue to go around the circuits?
Well, obviously you have a sense of when you're accomplishing the goals you set out for yourself. And I'll tell you something, Dino Bambino was an incredible performer. He should have went a lot further than he did. The last time I talked to him, he was in the United States Coast Guard, living his best life. A great brother and a very, very capable and one of my best dance partners, so to speak. So to work with him, it was a night off, quote unquote. We just had a natural chemistry and natural camaraderie. And again, what's funny about that match, it was a cage match. There was a run-in. There was no finish. Like that would be lampooned and just poo-pooed by the internet today.
Yeah.
That is the business that we were charged with accomplishing. We went out there and said, okay, this is what our marching orders are. How can we best accomplish this for this crowd? We were sold out in Green Bay at the Watering Hole.
Yep.
I don't know what it held at that time, 700 people or whatever. Had the time of our life, did the best we could. People loved it, regardless of not getting a resolution to the match. We did the best business we could that day, and like you said, they rewarded us for it. It was a lot of fun.
It's so funny because the way that you're talking about it, it like reminds me of stand-up a lot, in which like when you're early into the business, right, and you go up there and you kill, you just crush, right, and the crowd is loving it, applause breaks, everything like that. And then you could go and do the same exact set 2 nights later and it bombs and nobody laughs. And you learn, you learn very early on in that business that, hey, it's any given night, but it's just another night in which you could have the greatest match and then you could have the worst match in the same week.
I'll tell you a funny story exactly in that vein. I must have wrestled Colt Cabana a thousand times. We could have, to your point, the same match in a different town every night, and we did. So we kind of formula that we thought worked pretty well, and it worked in various parts of the country. We went to Mexico City, and let's have our match.
Yeah. And
they sat on their hands. They could care less. It didn't matter what we did. I remember I got them in a hold. I'm going, boy, this sucks. They hate us. They want us to just get out of here as fast as possible. It was horrible. But to your point, it was nothing different than we had done 100 times before that. And 100 times after, it was just that night, that crowd didn't want to see that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny, and you mentioned it, you perfectly transitioned into this question. You talk about Colt Cabana, who you have wrestled a ton of times.
Sure.
You mentioned that natural chemistry. Can I ask, from a wrestling perspective, what does that feel like? And what I mean by that is, like, when do you know of, like, oh, we got chemistry? Because I imagine there's some that's definitely, of course, like repetition. You know, you work with the same partners over and over, you're going to get that experience. But have there been points, and I'm sure there has in your career, that you've stepped in with somebody and you're like, oh, like we're just doing really good business with one another. Like, that's a great dancing partner.
Yeah, Cabana was one of those guys. And we had an advantage, too. So he went to Deerfield High School, which was about, 20 minutes from where I grew up. And we actually played against each other in football every year.
Perfect.
In high school. So he started training at the Steel Domain that Ace Steel opened in 97. And so, hey, here's this kid. I know of him from Deerfield High. So we were wrestling each other when he first started. He was on his very first road trips. I was a part of that. So we had like a natural chemistry and camaraderie before we even locked up to have these matches.
Love it.
And then 10, 15 years down the line when we're doing 7 Levels of Hate, it was like old hat, you know what I mean? And he was one that I had a natural chemistry with. We didn't have to plan a whole lot. Brent Albright, who was a great wrestler, was another one I didn't have to plan a whole lot with. And Blue Demon Jr., legend in Mexico, same thing. Just a kind of a natural, when we lock up, we just somehow knew what to do. You know what I mean? Just, and that kind of spark, that kind of instant chemistry, it's kind of rare.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a dancing partner. That's literally what it is, right?
Yep.
And it depends on who's going to step on whose feet. I think in terms of the way that the business has evolved, you've been talking about there's not a lot of planning with some guys because, again, either you just have that chemistry, you have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that is something that has changed in the wrestling industry today? And I'm talking more on, like, of course, like the bigger companies,
Sure.
where it comes from the planning to the in the moment. You see tons of wrestlers talk about, reacting in the moment to the fans, right? Slowing everything down, hearing the reaction, and basing what's going to happen next off of that.
Yep.
Do you think that there is more or less planning when it comes to professional wrestling today, like on some of the biggest stages? Of course, there's going to be, the bigger productions, the main events of WrestleMania. There's obviously going to be a bunch that's going to be, hey, we got to make sure we hit this mark at this time, what have you. But do you think that there's more or less, I guess, production in that sense of just being prepared for going out in the ring?
Well, I think you nailed an important point. I think it depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. So
Sure.
if this is live TV, worldwide TV, let's say it's Monday Night Raw, where you have to be meticulous in terms of we need to hit this point at this time and transition here to get here by this time. Obviously, that has to be planned ahead of time. That has to be rehearsed. That has to be completely nailed down from a production standpoint. If you're working a live event schedule, okay, non-televised live events, your house show, so to speak, that's where you have a little freedom to go out there and try things and fail and figure out what works and what doesn't, and how to have enough failures so that when the time comes and you're in front of a crowd that what you've planned is not resonating with, you know how to turn the page. So there's an analogy, right? There's good wrestlers and there's good workers. They are not necessarily the same thing.
Very true.
A good wrestler can plan a great match and execute a great match and make it look plausible and legitimate.
Sure.
A good worker can tap dance and then switch to ballet if need be. And he only knows that when the moment arrives. You know what I mean? So there's a definite level of experience that you have to attain. And yes, it's different now. A lot of the younger wrestlers coming into NXT are being thrust into positions where they have to be on television a lot sooner than maybe they ordinarily would be.
Sure.
And so now we have to kind of have puzzle pieces and show them how to put it together as opposed to finding your own way. There is a benefit to the younger wrestler being trained and processing their matches in a way that's very A to B to C to D.
Mm-hmm.
And then down the line, as they work for some time, now they can acquire that other skill, that dancing on the fly, if you will. And once you have both of those down, you're complete. And now you can't fail because you have already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, right. You look at, not to talk about me at all. It's,
please do.
When you get, so I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a while and I absolutely loved it. And then I had to stop when I was training for a marathon. But it was basically you walked in there and you just got your ass kicked every night.
Sure.
Like every single night, right? You're getting choked out, your arms getting twerked, ankle, whole 9 yards. And there is a moment where things click, but there's a moment where it goes from, okay, I have enough knowledge, I have enough experience that now I could start going on the offensive a little bit. And it kind of seems like that there is some overlap here where it's like once you have, I'm going to say, the basics down where you could like, okay, I could do this. It's repetition over and over and over again. I feel comfortable. Now I can start experimenting a little bit with my craft because that's what professional wrestling is. It is a craft that needs to be honed in. And it sounds like that's kind of the route that newer wrestlers are taking as well, whether in the performance center or what have you, of just like learning those basics. Most athletic person ever. You need to know how to talk. You need to know how to, like, teaching all of those things. Yeah, that's a lot to try and digest in one shot.
Oh, dude, it's unbelievable. That's why I give so much credit to the coaches at the Performance Center. You know, initially in 2015, that's what I was hired to do, to be a coach and a trainer there. To have athletes coming off the street and world-class athletes. Now, as you said, I've got to give you a complete portfolio. Here it is. Here's the keys to the kingdom, as Terry Taylor would say. It is mind-numbing, the amount of preparation and study and film review and ring time and small live event scenarios is just so much that's packed in that the general public doesn't see these students doing at NXT. It is unbelievable. I wish something like that existed when to that level when I was first breaking in. Of course, it didn't exist anywhere in the world. That's why WWE's at the forefront, as always.
Well, I mean, that's why, you know, from my standpoint, there's such a reverence for what is done in that ring, because you could have a world star athlete, right? A lot of folks like come from football or, you know, what have you, and they don't necessarily know how to talk. You know, like they don't
Right.
know how to cut a promo. They might be able to run the ropes faster than anybody, but if they can't talk, there's going to be a limit, right? There's going to be a cap on where or how far they're going to be able to go, or there's going to be like, hey, this is the box that you're in. And to be able to juggle all those things of being a world-class athlete, because we're even just talking about the cardio alone, my friend.
Sure.
World
Sure.
class. And then having to do all those things on top of it, you know, there's not another industry that kind of, in my opinion, comes close of what is expected of you in terms of athleticism and also the performance element.
And then on top of all the things you just said, you're still at the mercy of the paying customer,
Yup.
because you could have every tool in the world, but if someone for some reason doesn't want to see you use those tools, it's next man up.
Yep.
Right. So that it factor that is undefined. I don't know that it'll ever be defined. Why is Stone Cold and The Rock and Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and John Cena, why are they here when there's other guys who may or may not have skills above and beyond who never attain those heights?
Sure.
I can't explain it. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's also, you know, time and place, right? In terms of like where you're at your career, the place where you're wrestling, the place where you're performing, maybe that's not the place, or maybe it's just not utilized, and that you see wrestlers go from company to company, and maybe there will be, you know, they become superstars somewhere else, or they go to WWE and become a superstar. You know, there's always that element too.
Absolutely.
You talked about 2015 becoming a trainer. Something else happens in 2015. So in February of 2015, you go into the NWA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I did. Crazy, huh?
What, again, if we're 10 years, even though I think it was November of 95 when you started. So not even 10 years, right? You're going through all this. More than 10 years, good God, math is hard.
That's
you're going
20.
through all this.
Yeah.
At what point, like, is that a moment for you where you're like, damn, okay, like here's this amount of recognition. And I talk about this with athletes. It's something that like they can't take away from you, right? In which you could have this illustrious career and you have these championships and stuff like that. When you start talking about Hall of Fames and records and all that stuff, did that ever resonate with you like in a significant way? Or was it just kind of like it's a job well done?
No, there's a certain pride there, you know. I've, like I said, being a student of the quote unquote old school of wrestling and really loving that NWA mid '80s style, and that's kind of what I patterned myself and started to do later in my career. That meant a lot, you know, being the world champion, then wearing the 10 pounds of gold, and just being associated with the litany of people and that obviously that roster of NWA champions, and being on that list and then going into the Hall of Fame. Kevin Sullivan, who just passed away, and I went in the same class of 2015. So that was special too, because I was a big fan of his work. It's a job well done. It's a thank you for time served. It's you know, that proverbial pat on the back, but it's also that personal pride in knowing, man, when push came to shove and when the chips were on the line, you did good business, and here's your reward. A certain level of immortality, if you will, which is crazy, but also very nice.
Yeah, it is nice. I mean, there should be some pride in there. I mean, just again,
100%.
I'm talking about from a fan perspective, right?
Sure.
You know, this is for me. I'm like, damn, like I hope you can take pride like in that work, just the in-ring performances that you had, because the accolades are incredible, my friend. You know, and we're not trying to blow smoke or anything like that, but you know, again, there's just such a reverence for this business and the longevity in which you had a career in this business. I think I love your response to this, because you've been asked about future matches and all this great stuff. Your last match, Colt Cabana, right, in 14?
Yep.
So December of 2014, and you were asked about it of like, oh, I'll get in the ring, and you said like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to, and I'm grateful that I don't have to.
Yeah, man. It's funny because wrestling fans today, especially the WWE universe, it's like their jaws drop when I say it. Why don't you wrestle? I don't want to.
What do you mean you don't want to do another one?
Right. What? Huh? Why? Like, I had so many perfect days in the sun. I took so many bumps.
Yeah.
I had the time of my life for 20 years and was fortunate enough to have the amount of tools in the toolbox necessary for someone to open the door to a new pathway. It's like I say, walk your path with passion. And when you get to the end, redefine that path and walk it again. I've had multiple paths in pro wrestling, and I'm walking them all, man. I love every single one of them. And listen, if the time comes and they say, hey, we need you to have a match, brother, I will get my hands dirty. I got my hands dirty last night with Bronson Reed.
Yes,
a
you
little
did.
bit. You know what I mean? I am certainly capable, but am I looking to do that, particularly on a full-time basis? Hell no. I am good. I'm good just telling people it is official.
We got some mileage on the wheels.
Yeah, daddy.
I have to ask this because it's funny too, because you mentioned from the fan perspective, but also the wrestler perspective. It does seem that, and you see this just with athletes in general, everybody wants to have like that storybook ending, or at least that's something that people like gravitate towards. They want to have like that last perfect match and stuff like that.
Sure.
Looking at it from your perspective, so you're against Colt Cabana,
Yep.
you lose that match.
Yep.
What does that feel like for you? You know, 1, 2, 3, you lose the match. Where are you at of like, okay, this is it? And has that changed from where you are today, reflecting back on that last one?
What's awesome about our industry is obviously it's predetermined. And at that period of time, I had a big hand in determining what it is I wanted to do. So just for a little bit of context, I had a tryout with WWE in 2012.
Yes.
Ultimately for the job that I ended up taking in 2015. So the Performance Center didn't exist then. They were still doing everything out of FCW in Tampa. But I knew they were going to be building the complex in Orlando. And I knew that once that was done, that I had a really good shot of being hired on full time. So from, say, the end of 2012 to the end of 2014, I already knew in the back of my head that I am a lame duck pro wrestler, biding my time, earning a living as best as I can, knowing that that page is about to turn and will be turning. And of course, I didn't publicize that or let the cat out of the bag, or I didn't want to jinx anything. I didn't want to stooge anything off. I just said, I'm going to do the best business I can for the next 2 years. I'm going to fulfill every obligation I have. I'm going to put food on the kitchen table and clothes on my babies' backs. And hopefully when the time is right, I will transition to WWE. And it just worked out that way. So yes, looking back, it was perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted to lose. I wanted to go out on my back. That's the time it tested the old way.
That's the way.
To me, the right way. Cabana was the perfect opponent for that. And I did the honors for him that night, and I appreciate it. And we had a great time, and we had many cocktails later that night.
Hey, I mean, why not at that point?
Yeah,
why not, Adam?
Yeah.
Got one last question for you. I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm so appreciative of you doing this. We've raised about $1,500 for St. Jude, so
I am grateful.
Phenomenal. Your role now, you talked about kind of that adaptation that you go through, right?
Yeah.
So you already had to adapt as a teenager of having these dreams of going to play football, and now it's like, all right, now I'm going to adapt to life as a pro wrestler. You have this long career where all these accolades and everything, you get to go out the way that you wanted. To be in the role where you are now, there's been adaptation even within it, right? And just changing management and everything like that.
Absolutely.
What has that process been like? Because when you went into that role to begin with, it looks very different from what it is today.
Absolutely.
So what is that process like, and how were you able to kind of navigate it?
You said a great word. It's being adaptable, right? Again, I was so fortunate to have been put in a position because I had the necessary tools to do it, and then COVID happened and they were like, okay, we want a matchmaker on TV. And I was selected. And I'll tell you a funny story of how this all came about. There was a program on the WWE network called 205 Live. It was a cruiserweight program.
Yes, it was.
I was one of the writers on that program, and I was the executive producer. I was the one who handled all the wrestling matches, put the finishes together, booked the angles, all that kind of stuff. As part of that, in Raw production meetings, when we would film 205 Live, I had to read the script to the room. And they liked the way my voice sounded when I read the script. I am not shitting you.
You got a way about you, Adam.
I had a certain way. And then I put glasses on and I had more of a certain way. And here we are. Things happen in hilarious ways in our business. And that's how that one started. And here we are. God, it's almost, 5 years later now, 2020. We're coming into 2025. I have been the authority figure on WWE TV at this point almost longer than anybody that's ever done it. That is mind-blowing to me.
I mean, to start from how you got into this industry to where you are now. I mean, I see a lot of tweets, Adam, that you need a drink. I hope that you have gotten that well-earned drink, my friend, because it has been a pleasure to watch. And it just from the outside looking, it looks like you're having a blast. It looks like,
I've never, my grandmother told me years ago, Tom, find a job you love, you never work a day in your life. The only part of my job that's work is getting on that airplane. Once I'm in the arena, I am a 17-year-old kid all over again every night of the week. And I am eternally grateful.
I love it. I love it so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big shout out and thank you to the Raw general manager, Mr. Adam Pearce.
Hey,
I appreciate you.
Are we going to do this again? We have to do this again.
We are 100% going to do this again. We have a December charity stream, and I know you know one Wes Hodkowitz. So
Wes Hod in the house.
A little triple threat action come December. We'll bring you on back, and we'll have ourselves a great time.
I don't think the world can handle us three good brothers together.
I mean, that's just going to be... It's going to be a time, my friend.
It might be war games.
Adam, I so appreciate you taking the time and coming in to raise some money for an amazing charity. The chat wants it. They're talking about they want the triple threat, so it's gonna happen. We're gonna make it happen.
That the only thing I can say to that, Tom, it is official.
Let's get it, baby. Adam,
let's go.
I appreciate the hell out of you, folks. The St. Jude fundraiser will be staying open until next Monday. A huge shout out to Adam Pearce. Adam, where can everybody find you and all the things that you do, my friend?
If you have the ability to find social media, don't spend too much time on it, but at Scrap Daddy AP, at Instagram and Twitter, and search me on Facebook. I have a lot of fun, or I try to anyway. And just don't cause me too many headaches, because I don't want to have too many drinks. And I want you to love somebody today.
Love somebody, baby. Folks, thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. That's Adam Pearce. And as always, Adam, go Pack, go.
Yeah, you know it. Let's go.
Go Pack, go, baby.